Why? There are examples of people who left school in 6th grade and became billionaires. And there are kids who realized at an early age that the world is not as their parents describe it. When I figured out what it all looked like, I looked at it myself. I was like, oh, damn. So why am I wasting my time? I did this, I did that, I did the other thing. And in the end, I managed to reach that state, to be there, and then I realized that it's all absolutely real. The whole world is just in your hands. But the likelihood of you being able to do that is still like winning the lottery jackpot.
How much time a day is optimal for practicing your techniques?
There is a parameter. This parameter is called fatigue. This parameter is called irritation. If you start to feel irritated by the practice, it's time to take a break. If you enjoy the process, there's no reason to stop enjoying it. At first, yes, while everything is getting going, both the physical body and the mind can suffer. And these processes of restructuring, reshaping, changes, to some extent, even the breaking of old patterns is not so easy. Breaking old patterns, that's all. It's not that easy. And at some point, the mind might say, hey, slow down. And you say, okay, I'll just take a moment to breathe, cool down. The body might say, stop, because the energies that you are channeling through me, I can no longer handle. I need time to adapt. And you stop, waiting for the body to adapt. It's all about balance and harmony. So naturally, I can't say this by the hour, but if you feel irritation during practice, then it's time to do something else. If you're enjoying it, there's no reason to stop.
And you once said that, can you direct your released energy? Just like in practice, it applies to other areas of life. If you direct all your energy completely into the practice, then the other areas of life can suffer. How do you keep them?
You need to balance them.
So it distributes its resources, of course, and it also relies on internal feelings, on the fatigue from practice.
Look, it all depends on, first of all, what a person is doing, what they are practicing. I am a person who practices Sri Yantra. It all depends on what a person is doing, what they are currently practicing. If he's practicing shedding the cocoon, he absolutely can't stop. Because you keep going, this wave. It lifts, and at some point you might say, oh wait, I'm going to take care of something over there. To take care of your own business, but that's it. You've exhausted yourself from practice. You need to start over.
You need to be immersed in the flows.
Of course. And it all depends on what you're doing, what you're practicing. If a person practices simply the sensation of the fingertips, hands, and feet, then here, there are absolutely no limitations. You want to say, sit for a day, watch, or if you want, just 5 minutes. As long as the person feels it, as long as their mastery is being developed.
So here's the question. Does a human need gradually come to serious practices? First, for example, go through the same path of Christianity, and then move on to more serious things. Does a sudden leap in practice harm a person? For example, a person hasn't yet learned some simple discipline, like making their bed or managing finances. Well, roughly speaking, he's already going to practice, to open the gates to do something like that. How does it not harm?
I have a counter question. How can it harm?
Well, it's hard to explain. In a sudden leap, will a person be able to handle it?
And why wouldn't he be able to handle it? I don't understand what is on the other side of the scale. For example, look, can a person get a good high-paying job? What if he hasn't learned to make his bed? And why can't he go?
But the processes there are more complex.
So what will he learn? Are you seriously thinking that after college, a person comes out as a top-notch specialist?
No.
Of course not. A person is formed only in the process of his activity. You can't learn to ride a bike from a book. You won't be able to take apart an engine after sitting in a classroom for 5 years. Until you start getting your hands dirty with all of it, you won't have any skills at all. Not at all. Yes, you'll have some basic understanding. Yes, you can work with text. You can work with words, with terminology, but you're not a specialist. You're a beginner. And that's why if a person wants to dive into some activity, they don't need to prepare to dive into it. They just need to go and immerse themselves in that activity. Why? There are examples of people who left school in the 6th grade and became billionaires. He just immersed himself in a different activity, and there are people who graduated with honors and got a red diploma. He left school and ended up rotting in a dumpster somewhere under the heating pipes. Because besides that, he just didn't have the energy for anything else. He doesn't want to invest in anything else. There were such examples even in my school. There was a girl, an honor student, smart, beautiful. And then after school, 2 years later, well, we had a reunion of those graduates. I looked at her and was horrified. A single mother with a tattoo in half sleeve. That's it. The person has burned out. He's no longer capable of investing in anything. The same thing here. I recently had a conversation with one of the practitioners and she asked me about children. I said, Mom, I've never had kids. Why are you asking me about this? Well, it seems to me that you're there. More consciously, I say, well, come on, come on. Well, the child doesn't want to do homework. I say, you need to do it. I say, well, if you need to, then just do it. I say, well, come on, just a little bit. So this pattern of behavior, yeah, let's set that aside. I say, you did your homework, copied a ton of those notebooks. I did my homework, copied a ton of those notebooks. I say, and did anyone even pay you a ruble for that? So a person is doing an incredible amount of work. At a young age, this is assuming that child labor is actually prohibited in our country. Well, okay. And he gets nothing. That's motivation. That will drive him to be successful. Oh, no. He'll say, just go to hell, all of you. I spent my whole childhood doing all sorts of nonsense, and you want me to keep doing nonsense. At least pay me for that work first. Because when the child is small, he doesn't understand that everything here costs money. But then, when he grows up, when his parents become retirees and can no longer support him, it suddenly turns out that food in the fridge comes at a cost. To live in an apartment, you have to pay. To use a phone, you have to pay regularly, constantly. You pay for everything here. And what do we get? And there are children, mostly from underprivileged families, who realize at a young age that the world is not as their parents describe it. And it's not your homework that determines your success. It's your work that you direct into those areas where it pays off. In those areas where it pays off, homework doesn't pay off. What is the child interested in? Where is he even going? Where does he direct his attention? He says, look, he's playing soccer. I say, put him in a sports school. Let him become a highly specialized expert. I say, soccer players earn some astronomical amounts of money. I'll never earn that much by engaging in spirituality. They earn that just by running around the field. I say, send him there. There's homework, rolling the ball. He will be happy. He will be successful. He will be just fine. Listen, what about the idea? The thought, I say, of course, the thought, and the fact that you're stressing him out. Are you stressing him out? With these things, I say, you don't even need that. But are you still doing that? Because in this aspect, you lack awareness. I also resisted somewhere, probably around 7th or 8th grade. This protest inside me was starting to grow. In 9th grade, I was protesting in a more adult way. And I was just, well, how should I put it, persuaded. How about you at least get a high school education? Yeah, then I went to college. And in college, I was looking at all of it and thinking, what's the point? So I'm writing this thesis. No, it's a term paper. No one cares about it. You can see it. It's clear in the eyes of the teachers that they don't care about this term paper. I don't care. And she doesn't care, but it has to be done. Why? For what purpose? And there were people who went to college just for show. And my personal example of a person who came, I was sitting in the dean's office. The dean and I are discussing when I should retake the exam. Algebra, math. Because I didn't do very well on my first attempt. And a guy walks in. They smiled at each other. The dean takes his grade book, signs it with his hand, and says, that's it for you. Passed it. Certificate. Excellent. He closes the grade book and hands it over. And they smiled at each other again and went their separate ways. I actually envied that guy for the first time. Then I found out that yes, he has a job, he has his own business going on, and everything is good for him. I was like, whoa. So what am I wasting my time for then? So what am I even trying for? What am I even trying to learn here then? Well, these are more philosophical reflections now because education is completely different now and opportunities are opening up. But now education is becoming more and more specialized. So there are big corporations that say, look, you come to us for 6 months, a year, we train you, sign a contract, and you get a job right away. That's the thing. Here, at least you understand what you're doing. And when you're a little kid, your own mom says, do this completely pointless task, pointless, it doesn't pay off, and then I'll love you. And then I tell you, it's such nonsense. It starts, but this is what everyone is doing. And after going through that grinder, not every child is ready to gather their strength again and start investing into something else that could potentially pay off. So, if a person is asking for knowledge, skills, or mastery, you just go and practice. And it doesn't matter at all whether you can make your bed or not, or whether you did your homework. I didn't do it. You don't need to prepare to learn something, to master something, and to learn not just for grades, but that pays off. Because when you see the energy, you boldly surpass everyone around you. And while they're there, pondering and doubting, you've already achieved it.
Because for you, it's obvious there should be a goal, it turns out. The sooner you define your area of interest, your goal, the fewer unnecessary frantic movements you'll have.
The sooner you accept the rules of this game, and the rules of this game say that you pay to live here, the sooner you realize this, the faster you'll find a way to be useful to society. I'm probably saying some very sharp things right now, but that's a fact. If you're useful to society, society will give you money. If you're not useful to society, if you're useless to society, you will never have any money. Because God doesn't print money. Your deity in your heart doesn't print money. The soul doesn't print money. Money comes from another person. If he sees that what you are doing, it's in demand, that's great. Here is my activity. Why do I talk about this so calmly? Because before a person buys my courses, they have the opportunity to come to an absolutely open meeting, where I will show him the practice completely for free. After that, he has the opportunity to touch it, understand whether he needs it or not, and then make a purchase. I don't put myself in that position. So, guys, I'm not going to tell you anything. I'm not going to show you anything. It's amazing. Just go buy it.
Secret knowledge that only comes from money?
Yes, that is, everyone has the opportunity. Even the shaman, it seems like that's the most important part. You could come to the broadcasts, feel it all for yourself. I showed this practice completely openly, and then you can make a decision. And there was some symbolic amount, pennies really. Then there was another meeting. Yes, the amount there was already larger, but there I showed it on a completely different level. There I already gave people the content, the texts, according to which they can now clearly practice in a way that they would not have found on the internet. A person has the opportunity to try it, touch it, and make a decision. That's why I talk about all of this so calmly.
So all the practices are generally accessible and open? Yes, yes. Do the courses just gather these practices?
In the courses, of course, there's more, because otherwise it all loses its meaning. There's more in the courses, but a significant part of these exercises, these practices, I've already shown somewhere, one way or another.
Yes, and there is a sequence specific.
Of course, there is a system there is a methodology, and there are much higher quality explanations, practical explanations. Although, again, I've probably answered questions so many times that I've already told all of this 10 times. It's all systematized there. It's easy, simple, and accessible. This is a real methodology. Yes, there are people who, for example, have spent some time, like a year or two. We practiced exclusively with open practices. They listened to my answers to questions, attended some lectures, some meetings, and because of that, they made progress. Then they were like, hey, I want this to always be available. Exactly. At arm's length. Don't wait for the video to come out. Don't wait until you get home to answer the many questions you have. Don't wait for the next meeting where you'll be open and show the practice. I want everything to be on my table. And they decide to purchase these courses and sit there satisfied everything is good for them. There are people who just jump in with both feet and buy up everything they have, and then gradually they start to develop. We communicate, they ask some questions, because anyone who has purchased a course has the opportunity to ask me a question personally, and I answer those questions. Right now, I'm starting to answer slowly because the workload is very high, and I'm about to leave soon. But I answer these questions, so a person doesn't stay in a state of uncertainty. He can always clarify something that I might not have fully explained. It's important, of course, right? And it's in demand. That's all. It's in demand. But what another person chooses, that should also be in demand. But I don't know what he wrote. Wagon notebooks, this is not in demand. No one needs this. It's not even needed by his own parents. They, for some reason, in a deep, some kind of unconsciousness, they keep generating this go like this. Their grandparents, that's how the system works, and they raise their children. Just like that. And then suddenly it turns out that you go to courses for 3 months, and then you get a salary of 200, 300,000. And all this, everything that you did as a child is of no use to anyone at all. It's just not needed by anyone. Obviously, it's obvious. So why does all this happen next? And there are people who still don't act that way. And they feel really good. And there are people who, it was like that for me, and it will be like that for him.
These are great patterns of behavior, catastrophes, maybe even people.
And we have what we have.
We have what we have, I agree. A question on a slightly different topic. So people are now creating artificial intelligence. Is it possible to say that when he develops and becomes like a human, maybe even smarter, more functional, will this not be the next branch in the structure of gods? Maybe even. So a person creates something and he controls it.
Yeah, but what makes you think that he controls it?
This is totally off track.
Artificial intelligence, it's called intelligence because it's not so easy to control.
Yes, exactly.
It's easy to manage non-intelligent systems. But an intelligent system, that's a different story. It can be managed. Yeah, no, we'll definitely fight with him, of course.
You think we'll fight?
Of course, what do you mean it's unavoidable? And with it, and with its help, they're already fighting full force. Sooner or later, we'll have to fight with it. And then we'll agree, and we'll have 7 bioplatism. Happy ending. Happy ending, or not happy ending, there will be the awakening of Brahma, and all of this will come to an end.
It's what it'll be. Happy ending.
Well, it will be a zing, I would say. It's fine, everything will be okay. When nuclear weapons were developed, they did work for the good of humanity, and they also destroyed a certain number of people. And we fought with it, and now we can't really fight properly with its help. So it's all multifaceted. Artificial intelligence is also currently, it allows for certain simplifications in work, in the workflow. At the same time, it allows us to fight more effectively. At the same time, it still can't be a restraining factor. But sooner or later, it will be the factor that won't allow for a conclusion. But we will definitely fight with it. All of this will take place, but not right now. Right now, it's all still too weakly supported technologically. Right now, it's a whole bunch of computer equipment so that everything works properly. That's when science and technology will master quantum processes, and there will be several floors of computer equipment. You'll have it on your wrist, and your computing power will exceed that of several floors of a building. That's when things will get really interesting. It used to be like that previously. A room, a one-room apartment. It was a calculator, completely filled with lamps. Then, a 7-story building was like a computer. And right now, a computer is this thing through which we broadcast. That's when it will become possible, technologically. This will become possible, and this will not happen soon. Well, then we will already have interaction with this form. Intelligence.
I know there was something else I wanted to ask you. Why is it that in a world where there are so many technologies, artificial intelligence, and everything else during our lifetime, practices have become so relevant?
Humanity is getting dumber. Every time we replace the functions of our body, we lose those functions. It's an obvious fact. Well, in my tradition, there is a rule. You can't write anything down. Of course, no one is running after you if they tell you what to do. But no one is leading you by the hand. Of course, you're writing something down. Here is everything that I wrote down. I still won't fill it in. But the things I didn't allow myself to write down, if you wake me up last night, I can recite them to you without a single mistake.
That's right, yes. I remember my state after the Vipassana. I literally remembered 2 main things, and everything else just becomes unimportant.
If I had written it down, it would have been lost right away. Yes, everything we write down, everything we record on a medium, we cut off from our functionality. It stops being accessible to us. That's why there are mantras that I can never forget. There are mantras that I still make mistakes with.
Here's a question. Why are there so many masters now? Practitioners, and they all talk about different things. Sometimes opinions align, but very often they diverge. Why do they see the world so differently? And if there is one truth, why can even strong practitioners who have been practicing for a long time be said to be trustworthy? Why do they see all of this differently? Not like you, for example. Here's an example. Well, look, many masters talk about reincarnation, and these are strong masters. These are not just any who just read a book.
But where does such confidence come from?
There's no certainty, but there's this assumption.
An assumption. So we're moving towards an assumption. So they assume that reincarnation exists, while I assume that it doesn't.
Well, you don't agree that everyone sees things differently.
Well, look. For example, I've heard quite often from the same master that reincarnation exists and that time is an illusion. How can this be reconciled?
That's a very good question.
And how are we going to relate to this together?
I don't know.
And I know that if time is an illusion, then there is no reincarnation. And if reincarnation exists, then time is not an illusion. So this is an absolutely real fact. So you see, when a person perceives something and sees something else, he still describes it. Some people have the courage to say what? The previous description doesn't fit. Some people lack that courage. We can see the same processes in science. The entire scientific world is stuck on some theory and defends it with all its might. Then comes some kind of innovator and says, your theory is complete nonsense, reality is not like that. And at first they throw slippers at him, then they listen, then they check, and then they become convinced. It's the same here. People come to me too. In their positions, they say, Anton, you're wrong. I say, so you go take a look, then we'll talk. And those who study this question, those who direct their attention there, with horror discover that I am right. And there is one life. No one wants to live just one life. Everyone wants, this, if it didn't work out, I'll catch up in the next life.
Well, by the way, that's a good observation, that many people think like that. What? Well, okay. We still have a lot of lives, and everyone seems to have gotten used to believing in that. Well, by the way, you mentioned in one of the interviews that people do reincarnate and that it really exists. It's just earned through hard work. A lot of hard work.
Understand?
But they do exist.
A person technically has that possibility. Yes, it's real. It can be done. But first of all, it's not a given. It's the same as a person having the opportunity, for example, to become president. But the obvious and harsh, stubborn reality is that our president hasn't changed for over 20 years. Well, it's the same here. We can talk about anything, and let's say even a practitioner, a true master who sees everything. Well, he saw one reincarnation. So, everyone reincarnates. Why didn't he see that 90% of people live here last time? Why is he silent about that?
In general, it's better not to count on that.
Of course not. It's like, there are people who they work hard, learn, strive, achieve, and live comfortably. And there are people who dream their whole lives of winning the lottery. Well, someone wins, someone wins. Are you ready to risk your whole life and see if you'll be the one who wins or not? Well, for example, I'm not ready. I'm not ready either. I don't even try to play the lottery. Although I know very well that yes, someone has won. It's the same here. Yes, I know very well that there are some particularly unique cases where a person really reincarnates. So it's like winning the lottery. In most cases, everything is highlighted. Here, that's it. No more, no reincarnations. And if we take the thesis that time is an illusion, then even my statement that there are some unique cases, that's also like, what kind of cases are those? How do they manage to do that? Reincarnates. And I know how it works because I've seen how these processes are structured. So there is, figuratively speaking, a spiral of time, from which at the moment, death, you, step into the Bardo space, into purgatory in a Christian sense. And from this Bardo space and purgatory, you have the opportunity to see these spirals of time, these paths of time. You can find them however you like and refocus on them, manifesting in a physical body. But this is a physical body. It exists. And so you just become aware of yourself in it.
You connect with it, so to speak.
Yeah. It's just like having it on your hard drive in your computer. There's a movie. This movie is there in its entirety. You can click with the mouse on any second of that movie, but it's all there in its entirety. It won't change just because you're clicking on different parts of it. There is an opportunity for a person in a certain state of being in space, Bardo, to click on some point in these endless little spirals of time, and to become aware there, that is to be born. Is that so? It is so. But the likelihood of you being able to do that is still like winning the lottery jackpot. But that exists. And their time is really illusory while you can focus your attention on a specific point in space and time and enter. Here in this one, the illusion of time, it exists.
So it turns out that right in this space, Bordeaux, some things are formed. You know, like they say, a person chooses their parents or something. Choose life. Some intention is formed at this point. Yeah. But you need to understand how it is formed.
If a person has the illusion that they are sitting there, thinking, moving back and forth, well, that's probably all I slept, although there is also its own connection here. Well, I mean, no, that's complete nonsense. That doesn't exist there. It all gets determined instantly by the configuration of your consciousness. If your consciousness is configured for the Kali Yuga, well, other eras won't shine for you. Although all eras are manifested simultaneously. It's not that simple, you know? The logic, but we have both Sati and Yuga, and the two pairs of Yugas and the Treta Yuga and the Kali Yuga are all manifested simultaneously. Just at different points on the spiral of time.
It's very complicated. In the same time, it's simple.
You just have to go through it. You just have to go through it. Because for Brahma, that's why there's this multiplicity of options. He doesn't worry about where things happen because everything is balanced out. Parallel events. And when a person is in the space of the Borda as pure consciousness, first of all, it has its own characteristics, meaning its yantra, how much it is manifested, how much it is revealed, and in general, what is still preserved and functioning in it, basically. Even if you don't know what a yantra is, you still have one. And the impulse of what you want, so your passion will determine which point in space you will gather. And this will happen, I'm saying it again, instantly, because there's no delay compared to the delays that exist in the physical body.
You know, I have this association, it's like a reflex, something like that, right?
Well, yeah, you can compare it to a reflex, by the way. That's a good analogy. Yeah. Yeah, you could say that. And you can't really make a mistake there, on one hand, but you also can't just show off.
So you can't really do something on purpose?
No.
It's just that some flow carries you, and depending on what your configuration is, that's where you'll end up.
Yeah, you're like a puzzle piece. You'll fit somewhere and it will match you. You won't be able to fit into something that you don't resonate with. But there are, again, certain levels of consciousness. Basically, those who know what a Sri Yantra is and can practice in advance have these levels of consciousness. So when you get there, you don't practice anything anymore. You just click, click, and there you are again. Or click, spasm. The first gates. Get the result. Yeah, so there's no time for you there anymore. Sometimes people ask me, Anton, why learn to go into the astral? I say, when are you planning to learn this process? When are you going to die? When you won't have a physical body anymore. So that's it, let's go check out. It's like asking me, why learn to swim if I only walk on Earth? Well, it turns out there's no point. But if you find yourself in water, the chances are that you'll learn to swim there in just a few seconds. How long are you going to flounder around there? It tends to zero. But that's how it is. There was a lyrical digression. And so, when a person achieves initiation in the practice of the yantra, they can already practice the configuration of their consciousness. Then, having reached a certain level door of opening, of manifestation, they can even linger there. Linger, because they have the freedom to do so. Of being... But the people who unexpectedly find themselves there, it's a moment. All this, or in the first gates, you are already lying in the form of a completely spasmodic particle in the form of a crystal, which cannot perceive. Or you instantly manifest at some point in space and are once again fully immersed in the illusion of time. And again, it seems to you that there is a past and a future, even though it all happens simultaneously. And even modern physics, quantum physics, not quantum psychologists, but quantum physicists, they observe that upon reaching certain speeds, they can access both the past and the future. How can you access the past if it doesn't exist?
Well, actually, yeah, that's another question. How do psychics communicate with the deceased? If they are already burning out in the first gates, those pieces of consciousness have long since burned out. So how can we communicate with them?
So how do people communicate with avatars in neural networks now?
And it's the same principle.
We have informational and energy informational fields. They don't forget anything. There's this saying, the internet remembers everything. So the Akashic records remember everything. So there is a request, and you can go with that request. You see, mostly the people who really know how to do this, they just pretend. They truly master it. They usually go in there with a clearly formulated request. And, oh, I got it. I'll talk to him. Yeah, there was no dialogue there. It happens in an informational packet, like click, click. And then he sits there and decodes it in his own words. So he chooses words based on the vibration that has entered him. And the energy informational packet, it is extracted from the space of the Akashic records. The informational, energy informational field where everything is recorded. Accordingly, if a person's identity is recorded there, you can easily find that person's response within that identity. He is already present there. You just read it from there. It's the same thing, but to draw an analogy, right now there's a figurine in the shape of a lion on my table. So what am I talking to her about? I can say what form it takes. Well, to ask a question, I opened my eyes, yeah, in the shape of a lion, but we didn't really have a conversation. I was just reading the information, and the same thing, it happens there. So there's no such communication there. If there is communication, if you are direct, blah, 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 blah. So I'm almost 100% sure that he's talking with a fragment of our human consciousness. And he's just fooling some inorganic being, because at that moment, while this being is fooling him, it's also feeding on him. Mostly, such people burn out quickly. They burn out. Why? Because they are just food for those who are fooling them. But their sense of self-importance doesn't allow them to admit that they're being foolish. These are also unfamiliar people.
Unfortunately, it happens. But how can you tell the true master from the false one? Because I know cases where even some, as we call them, false masters, have been helpful to a person.
To develop oneself? Look, it's actually a very simple question. So how do I tell if I should listen to someone's advice or not? Well, look, do you want to be like him or not? For example, I came to a martial arts master. I'm looking, and what has he achieved? Well, he's a champion, that champion. I'm like, oh, when it comes to martial arts, yeah, it's worth it. But at the same time, I don't know, over there, 3 wives, 4 divorces, kids, he was sent away. I'm not going to ask him how to build a family. Why? I don't want it to be like that for me. I'm only going to ask him about martial arts. It's the same here. If you want to be like the person you're asking, if you want the same for yourself, you should probably listen. If you don't want to have it the same way, then you shouldn't listen. It's the same as when a parent gives you advice, and you look at your parent's life and say, I'll probably pass on your advice.
It happens, right? It turns out that as a true master, he should not be just that kind of person, which all spheres of life are established. It turns out so. That is, he can own some specific of his own. I mean, to be oriented in a specific area.
I mean, all spheres of life are in order. But what about monks? Do we just sweep them under the carpet?
Who? Monks?
Yeah, they can't have all areas of life sorted out, yet they can be absolutely perfect masters.
But they simply don't want to sort out those areas of life.
That's absolutely right. They don't have that need. It's the same as with me. At first, I was just fanatically driven to figure out how this world is structured. When I figured him out, I found meaning in certain aspects of the social approval of my actions. I don't do them because I'm not interested in it. And why should I do something there if I'm not interested in it? It can't. So, how do you figure out which master is real and which one isn't? By developing yourself. Develop your own abilities. There are no other options. Even if you find a true master, it won't help you at all. It's like finding a real billionaire. And so what? Well, yeah, that's a real billionaire. He's got a ton of money. And what do you get out of it? How do you find him? Well, there they are, sitting in our state Duma. That's how you find them, but it doesn't make you feel anything, neither warm nor cold. You need to develop yourself. And no other way. If you come to someone, for example, who will advise you about investments, and this person trades currencies. Don't ask him about investments. because he makes money from trading currencies. It's an obvious thing. If a person makes money from investments, hell no, he's not going to tell you what he's investing in, because why would he want competition? He's doing just fine. Yeah, there may be something somewhere. You need to really tune in and turn all your radars on to hear it. So here's a very good example. For instance, Ayas. This is a person who was a fantastic salesperson. He could sell anything. It didn't matter to him what to sell. And in the end, he started selling air. And so a person comes to him and asks how to build a business. He's pretending to explain something to him. Naturally, most likely in the end, there will be nothing. Why? Because the person is selling air, he's a marketer, a very good marketer. If you learn marketing from him, that's pretty good knowledge. But if you learn how to build a business, you won't build anything because that knowledge isn't there. He didn't build a business, he just sold. The same goes for courses. Blinovskaya, what was she doing that brought her income? And what was she teaching? It's not the same thing.
But still, those courses by Blinovskaya, that's how. As I think, yes, it's some kind of stepping stone to other practices, to other, I don't know, courses. Well, it's like an intermediate.
I'm not against it being intermediate, yes, of course. I also went through very different systems. In my time, when I was looking for a master, I went through this Dianetics, this Scientology. I touched them from the inside, what it is, and there were others that were very questionable. In the end, it seemed like communities. Going through, all this takes time. So on one hand, yes, of course, there are steps. Who would argue? But if you can skip 1, 2, or 3 steps, but if there's a way, why not take advantage of it? So either run through them very quickly. And so to run through these steps very quickly, you still need to understand what to develop. I will only have to rely on myself. Don't you need to find a master when you clearly understand what you want to develop? There was a case. I had a case about one. Practice. I was there were other people, and we were talking among ourselves. And one person tells me, listen, he's a scoundrel. He's not a good person. Why should we? Let's not learn from him. I said, wait, what's so bad about it? What he's showing really works. Why is it bad? What good did he do? Well, there was a situation there. In short, they had some personal situation. He behaved, it's not nice. And now, come on, I won't. I said, listen, I'm not planning to build my personal life with this person. He's not a member of my family. He's not my friend. I turned to him as a specialist, a narrow-focused one. I said, what difference does it make to me how he behaves in other aspects? I said, no, I'm going to learn from him. But I'm not going to be friends with him. Okay, you warned me. That's how it is. It's impossible to be perfect everywhere. It's impossible, yeah, and that's not necessary. But when you're a master at something, just a little more is needed.
Even more likely, you probably know how. It depends on how the master feels about the fact that some sphere of life is in decline. For example, you could say that I, for instance, don't need this area of life at all. I'm not supporting it in any way.
You don't even need to be a master here. We'll take an ordinary average person. Does anyone go to the football stadium? Some people are at the bar, while others are at home playing on the computer. And the one who stays home playing on the computer has no obligation to go to football games or sit in a bar. So these are different areas of a person's life. And if a person, I want to emphasize something else. If you want to learn something, look for someone who has already achieved everything there, or at least what you want to achieve. At the same time, you shouldn't give a damn what else he does. If you try to find the ideal, you know, this image of the saint, who is holy in everything, yes, there are no such people. Even if someone seems that way to you, believe me, they'll quickly prove the opposite to you, that they're not like that. For example, I learned from Zhgutov. Well, Taichi, Zhgutov studied in China, Taichi, and when he met his master, Zhgutov was a vegetarian, you know, so sublime, so spiritual, and so he meets this Chinese master who masters these arts, and he orders it for himself. A piece of meat, coffee, and she sits and eats in front of him like, well, what do you want from me? And he's like, and I will learn from this person. And then something clicked in my head. He said, wait, I'm not planning to learn from a vegetarian. I'm here to learn, damn it, martial arts. Well, let's at least see if he really knows what he's doing or not. He Says, let's start learning. Let's see. Well, I'm okay with learning from you. I don't care if you eat me. Basically, in the very first class, he showed something that this person then studied for several years. Do it. And that's all. And so it is. You can move very quickly, but if you're trying to find the ideal, then the ideal doesn't exist at all. It contradicts the nature of the universe. He is as perfect as a creator if you focus on him. Well, maybe that's the only way to reach the ideal, but how long are you going to try to reach it? Again, it's up to you. It's not about how perfect he is. Here you go, the creator God, and you don't even need to look for anyone else.
We ultimately come to the conclusion that feeling is the most effective tool.
And common sense isn't a bad thing either.
Let's move on to the next question. Why do the effects of practices fade away for people? Sometimes a person is very experienced in practice. Somehow all like that. Spiritual, you could say. Like Emron, right? And then some events unexpectedly happen, some reality unfolds in the realm of existence. Directs a person into certain stories, and they quickly lose those effects. Why does this happen?
Because a person forgets that they are human. He forgets that he has passion. There is a great temptation experiencing certain states, the effects of practices, and then falling out of that. You keep comforting yourself with the idea that you are still the same. It's an exaggerated pride, very well disguised. Myself, I experienced such a state. This is my first time. Well, not the first time, but when I already did. I realized that out-of-body experiences are a reality. I mean, they're not just dreams, they're something very specific. When I found confirmation that this is a reality, I flew to my friend. I hit him in the face. He called me himself in the morning and told me what happened to him. He didn't know that I did it. And then I realized that it was all absolutely real. And then I was walking down the street like this through people. Well, people were moving on to the next one, and I was like, what am I even talking about? They don't even know that this is something that can be done in principle. I was so filled with it. Although at that moment I wasn't in the astral. I was walking down the street, I was just like them. But my self-importance flew off into space. When a person experiences a state, for example, of intense heart opening, it fades away, but it is possible to experience a state when everything opens up and you feel like a real deity. The whole world is just in your hands. You are the whole world. And then you come back from that state. But admitting this becomes very difficult. Yourself?
There must be sincerity, and you are like that.
I am a deity. I am a deity. And you're no longer a deity. You're already in a crowd, I don't know, on the subway, going somewhere. I am a deity. And it's mainly on this contrast that everyone stumbles. Because as soon as you fall out of that state, then later, well, not for me. You can act like that. You can pretend. But the passions haven't gone away. The passions that were in you are still there. If you want, I don't know, to have sex, if you want to eat meat for some reason, you've almost convinced yourself to be a paranoid. I actually have acquaintances like that too, who in public say, I'm a paranoid, with 10 years of experience. And in a private conversation, there's meat and fish and everything that's on the table, and everything goes into you. Thank you. This is a master I was personally acquainted with. Found it? No. Well, I mean, the person really, yes, he reached the state of a paranoid, so there's no doubt about his abilities. But there are huge doubts about how he positions himself and what he's doing off camera, so to speak. So, the people who know me, why do I talk about all this so easily? Because first of all, I use my own name and surname. My name is what it says on my passport. I don't have a pseudonym. I'm not hiding behind one. Secondly, the people who come to me for individual sessions, they come to my home. Again, I'm not hiding anywhere. Well, they know my address. We organize some meetings, we hold events. Again, please, it's easy to reach me. I am who I am. I initially positioned myself as I am. I didn't come up with the idea that I'm a Shan, very ancient. I said, guys, I'm not a Shan, I just crawled out of there myself. Look what I can do. Do you like it? Let me teach you. And that's when I had conversations, and then after some time, with my Ashan, there were some moments he didn't make any claims against me. 0, because I didn't lie at any point. 0, because I didn't lie at any moment. I didn't make anything up. I didn't take any of those for myself. Qualities that I don't have. I told the guys, well, as for rituals, yes, we studied them, but honestly, I couldn't care less. I found it uninteresting. That's true. I am who I am. That's right. So I am who I am at the same time. For example, I had some cases. A person comes to me, well, how do they come? A person, Anton, is writing back and forth and he says, do you have a wife? I say, no, I don't have one. And kids? I say, no, I don't have one. Well, okay.
Well, okay, it also depends on what the person's goal is. If a person's goal is to be in the material world, fully in all areas, so that the wheel of balance is round, then they will probably go to someone whose life is also like that. Well, if he wants serious practices, if he's a reasonable person.
Because again, the audience who ultimately sent Ayaz to jail, well, these are reasonable people.
So
a person makes very strange actions. Then he wakes up, he realizes that he has done something strange. And then he starts making different actions. Not strange, but quite explainable. A person can make a strange action. You can find so many stories about scammers, about schemes of deception, about all of that on the internet. And how many moments were there? Yeah, even in my life, when you make a move. They are driven by some internal, selfishness, some kind of wrong and false ego. When there's, a benefit that's unfair and you realize like, oh, now I'm going to get 10 times more than others. In reality, no one is going to let you deceive them 10 times more. But, you find yourself in temptation, in a lure. Christianity has this word, you fell into temptation. Oh, yeah. And then when you realize that you've been deceived, you're like, damn, how could I have been such an idiot? Yeah, it's very simple. You stumbled over those passions that you suppressed, the ones you brushed off. That you said, no, I will never be like that. Yeah, no, you are like that. You just pretend that you're not like that. And as soon as they detach you from that, you just fall apart. For example, what kind of person is easy to deceive? A greedy person is easy to deceive. Because it's very easy to hook him on that. What kind of person is very hard to deceive? It's very hard to deceive a generous person. Again, if we take the material aspect, they conducted it. Psychologists, it's an interesting experience. So they decided to find out where the boundaries of self-control are. That is, where a person still doesn't go along with the people around them. What kind of people are they? What are their moral values, their ethical values? And an experiment was devised. They made a model of an electric chair. They placed an actor on this model of an electric chair. And they made a power regulator. And so they allowed the subjects to access this power regulator, but they didn't know that they were the subjects. So people from the street, from certain categories, they hooked a passerby. They said, do you want us to conduct research here? Do you want to participate? Well, I want to. So he's placed in front of this model. It's like a performance. Basically, they give him the remote control and say, look, we're going to ask this person in the chair some questions. If he makes a mistake, you turn on the chair. If he makes a mistake again, you increase the power and turn on the chair again. We're trying to find out, so if you inflict more pain, will he remember it or not? So that's how it all works. He's like, okay. And they took from one category of people and they easily cranked it up to full power. The guy was already twitching. He was foaming at the mouth, screaming, let me go. And this is like normal. Well, I was allowed to do this, so it's all good. I was sitting there pushing. Well, of course, that's all. The performance was.
Yeah.
And so in the end, they called a priest to take part in this event. He agreed. He pressed it, looked at what was happening and said, I'm not going to do this anymore. He says, well, it's an experiment. That one agrees. And that one is like, yeah, I agreed. Well, an actor, and they tell you, come on, crank it up stronger, push. He says, no, and that's it. Well, no, because I'm not going to do that. His mental stability didn't allow him to do that. And there is also a certain internal setup in this. Because as you are to the world, so the world is to you. This is one of the laws of the universe. And there are people who don't care about this rule. They're ready to do some absolutely crazy stuff until that craziness turns around and comes back to them. Then they only. How could I have been like that? And there are people who will simply refuse to do this from the start. And that's it. Based on their moral qualities. But these qualities are they can also be wrong. Because there is morality, yes, there is ethics. Morality imposes itself on you, while ethics can be something internal. And it's not all that straightforward here either. And to sum it up, that's all. That's all my stories. You need to develop Yourself? Yourself? Yourself. Because when you develop yourself, you see people who help you in this matter. And when you yourself, your eyes are like 5 kopecks, you don't know where to go, and then no one will lead you anywhere except to use you and throw you away. Well, then.
Very interesting. Thank you for such a story. For such an example, such a question, does a person need to know their highest goal and have intention in order to practice correctly? And how sincere should that intention be? I'm getting to the point that some people take just interest as a basis and they go into practice. Then, at some point, something happens and the person starts to doubt whether they want it, whether they need it. And if you want to achieve some high goal, achieve your spiritual goals. So do you really need to sincerely feel and be passionate about that desire, that goal?
And how does a person behave in other processes? It behaves differently.
Well, look, here I am.
A person who, for example, is entering a family for the first time in their life, into a family, into marriage. Doesn't he have any doubts? Isn't he afraid? Is he really passionate and absolutely sure? He doubts, and the woman doubts, and the man doubts.
Yes, but you don't need to invest that much energy there. How much? We invest in practices?
Yeah, well, then your family will fall apart literally within a year. As soon as the hormonal background decreases?
Yes, it works the same way with practices.
It's all the same. You invest, and you will keep investing throughout your life in the family. Otherwise, it will fall apart. The same goes for practice. You either invest in them and grow beyond yourself, because the higher you climb, the heavier the load on you becomes. Can you imagine I'm going to start behaving just like I did 20 years ago? What will this lead to?
I really don't know how to behave.
I know. Of course not. No, it's a one-way street. You can't even turn back now. It's not about reducing the intensity. So in everything...
Well, you shouldn't turn away from life. Somehow turn away from life's passions. You once said that it's very important to fulfill your passions.
Of course.
So if you're practicing and something has caught your interest, it caught my interest. It led me in the wrong direction.
In what wrong direction?
In the direction of spiritual development.
So that's your development satisfying your passions.
So you shouldn't ignore it.
Of course, it's an integral part of your development. Can you imagine the state of a person who denies themselves their passions? Let's just throw out some basic logical conclusions right now. Let's take a child. He plays for an enormous amount of time. The game he's playing doesn't pay off at all. It's a pointless activity. Let's take away the child's ability to play. And let's see what comes of it.
It's going to be a sad story.
Well, and such people, by the way, they really exist, and nothing good comes of it. The same thing. Well, you're not 6 or 7 years old anymore. You're 20 years old. So what has changed? The needs are still there, they just change. Why do they change? Because your needs were satisfied and new ones appeared. Well, for example, when you were 6 years old, you loved watching cartoons, but at 20 years old, you really don't care about those cartoons anymore. But at least you have something else, some other video formats that you enjoy watching, some other websites. Well, there, DIY, I don't know, axe fixing something. Until you satisfy that, you won't get anywhere, you can't escape from here. So, development is development, and passions are passions. It's precisely our passions that determine our position in space, in reality, at a point in time. Exactly them, and that's exactly why we come here, so that we don't have those passions anymore.
What if a person is so passionate about their goal, and he says, that's it, I've made up my mind, I'm completely shutting myself off from the material world, I want this, my intention is very strong, and he starts to practice, to completely ignore reality.
So,
that's not good.
why is that not good?
So it's okay when he wants to do something.
So, where do we get the idea of right and wrong from now? We didn't have that.
All right, let's put it this way. That's not good, and that's not beneficial for you.
Why?
But you say that we still need to fulfill these desires because you, in a state of Bardo, and still you These your desires, right? Desires? Yes, you could say will throw you off course.
Yes, that's right.
I'm confused now. What was the question? All right, that's no longer a question.
I still remember the flow of our thoughts. The question was, what if a person burns completely? Spiritual goal is ready to go into a cave, and there to practice, will he succeed or not? He will succeed. He became 1 in a million. It's like playing the lottery. Do you want to play? Well, play. I went to live in that cave. And I said, yeah, no, guys, I overthought it. Does that mean everyone overthought it? No. One person might go into the cave and succeed. And out of 1,000 who go there, they'll find some dead. Are you ready to take that risk? Take the risk. I can tell you more. Reaching a certain level of energetic manifestation. Burning away all your passions, descending from vipassana. Yes, you achieve purification. But will you be able to walk this path? It's a rhetorical question. Everyone answers it for themselves. So I periodically had such requests from practicing people. So Anton, I realized everything. I understood everything. I kind of accepted the intention, made the decision. I'm going into the cave. I say, when you go into the cave, don't sell your apartment and don't throw away your keys. The person made it to the cave, some time passed, and they wrote. I say, what's going on with you? Did they set up the internet in the cave? At the same time, yes, there are such people, and they are called Kori. Do you know what the success rate is there?
What?
Exactly the same. Because all the ways in their essence are absolutely the same. And so I prefer to walk my path with joy, enjoying every day of my life. And some people prefer to cover themselves in the ashes of dead bones, of those dead burned bodies. Are there such people? Yes, I don't want to be like that. It's the same as someone being ready to do rituals their whole life to achieve a light body, and some are ready to spend their whole lives in meditation to achieve a light body. The main thing is that it feels right to you. And in these matters, there is no such concept as good or bad, but there is a false ego that says, yeah, come on, it'll work out faster, there are more chances. Yeah, let's just give up everything. I don't want to work. Come on, I'll become a paranoid. There was a story like this. The only person throughout my practice who couldn't do that, to become a paranoid. Do you know what his motivation was? He got fired from his job, and he realized that if he didn't exist anymore, he would have more money left. This is the only person I saw who couldn't become a paranoid. I couldn't activate this mechanism. All the other people who did this were really driven by the idea, and they were basically doing fine. Everyone succeeded. People haven't been doing that for a long time now. I'm just recalling certain stages of my life. And here's an example for you. It's the same when a person says, that's it, I've messed up here. It didn't work out. Everything collapsed here. I destroyed this. Everyone here is a scoundrel. I've taken offense at everyone, so I'm going to go live in a cave. Yeah, of course, without any chances. And there are people, they really exist. I've heard about people like that, but I haven't personally interacted with them, who say, so, I raised a child, took care of my wife, provided for my parents, built a house, and planted a tree. That's it. I'm going to a monastery. Goodbye, everyone. People like that have an incredibly high chance of success. Incredibly high. Who are you?
Everyone has a choice.
Yeah. In what situation do you find yourself? I found myself in situations where things just weren't working out for me. Like, well, that's it. I'd rather do it right now. No. It didn't work out. But when I closed off all the basic some moments in my life, I satisfied all my passions, who are not some kind of crazy people. Well, just passions, ordinary teenage passions. I satisfied them not being a teenager, because I was there a little bit. The side of esotericism. But then when I came back, I was like, wait, I seriously missed something there. And I did this, and I did that, and I did the other thing. And you know how much easier it got. And suddenly it turns out, even without practice, I can be in a very relaxed, open state. Energy moves through me calmly, and it moves freely through me. And now it's rush hour in the subway. And on the bus and during broadcasts, and when someone with a terminal illness comes to me, well, heavy people come. I'm doing just fine. Everything works for me, everything flows. But when I was broken in that area, in this area, and in a third area, I tried to pretend that those areas didn't exist through practices. They still came out. I couldn't sweep them under the rug. Because when you truly practice, everything from there comes up. All your demons gain strength in the same way. And sometimes you trip over yourself.
I understand. Well, I understand that you still have passions that you haven't pursued, and something else is pulling at your attention.
I have things left to do that I haven't done. And yes, there are still some passions, but I don't see any difficulty in pursuing them. I'm just not in a hurry.
Do you think your life will be enough to prohibit questions?
I don't think anyone can handle it at all. I live the way I feel. Those who know me, they know how I live, and they want the same.
The thing is, any practice is about working with attention. Before we do anything, we first direct our attention there. It can be meditation, reading, perceiving thoughts, awareness of reality. In this way, attention is primary. Attention makes everything come alive. Can Anton give a practice on the perception of attention? The source of attention? These are the essential things of all practices and teachings.
The source of attention. Well, I understood what the person asked me. The source of attention is fundamental. If a person wants to practice in finding this primal cause, it's nothing else. Like diving into your heart in the state of arthanarisha. That's the only place where there's a possibility. And believe me, at that moment you are no longer in the body. You won't be in the dream of Brahma, nor in the body of Vishnu. At that moment you'll be in some absolutely indescribable spaces. And perceive this up-down? High, far away, where your body is in relation to this space, it's actually about something else. Your body is left in the spiral of time. You are already outside of these mechanisms. And so, moving in this direction, through the bindu in the heart, that's at least how I move. Although you can definitely go through the bindu at the crown. I haven't tried that. I generally have enough heart. That's where you can perceive the source of awareness. See this awareness in yours. Well, potentially you can see awareness in its true form, just like that. But these are practices not for 5 minutes. These practices can even take more than half a lifetime. These are practices that require, at least in my understanding, how I manage to do it. They require in pushing yourself beyond the limits of your abilities by all available means. I had a set of ascetic practices that I liked and that were very effective. So I immersed myself in these ascetic practices. There was that last one. Well, like the last time, not the last time, but in general, one of the times. I immersed myself in asceticism for 6 months, and I completely disappeared from everyday life. I didn't exist as the everyday Anton, who does something every day. I was completely immersed in the practice. It lasted a very long time. And in the end, I managed to reach that state, to be there for a long time, and then to rejoice in what you've achieved. A bandage on the heart.
Can your practices help other people? How do you feel about that? And should a healer do this in the game, or is it not their role?
You can create the illusion for yourself that you're helping someone. But if you, as a serious practitioner, you simply see that it's impossible to help anyone.
So, indeed, you can only be a healer for yourself.
Saint Seraphim of Saraf once said, "Save yourself and thousands around you will be saved." That's an incredibly accurate phrase. And it's not even me who said that. I can only say that it's true. If you nurture the illusion that you can save someone, well, most likely, you're just playing with your sense of self-importance. Well, not really, of course, but there are times when a person is just not capable of anything on their own. But they push their child hard to become a champion. Then the child gains strength and says, "You know what, dear mom and dad, why don't you just go to hell with your positions?" This is what happens when a person tries to save someone. How many parents, not having realized their own goals, force their own child to achieve those goals? What success comes from all of this? So what comes out of this? Who are you trying to save there? There is a basic principle. If a person turns to you for knowledge, and you have this knowledge, give it to him. If no one asked you, don't interfere. Don't interfere with people's lives. If a person comes and says, do this for me, you're just going to spoil them. And if we're just talking about plain mindless healing that can be done, I even mentioned, I practiced healing, I healed people, I did that. I've seen how it all works. And what am I saving? A person has a physical body, a psyche, and energy. So what am I saving? I was basically saving the physics. Basically, I just took the problem and pushed it as deep as I could. It didn't dissolve. I was sane about myself. I didn't take it upon myself. Because why do I need it? I pushed it as deep as I could. At first, I did it unconsciously. I just got lucky. And then, when my quality of perception increased, I was able to reach out and perceive at more subtle levels. I was like, oh, this is interesting. And then an event occurred that crossed out all my further activities as healer. I said, no, that's it, enough. No one complained. No one made any claims. On the contrary, I said enough because the madness of people where you just come in and remove the problem like this, it starts to grow exponentially. The madness of a person, when you just come in and solve their problem, well, healing can be different too.
You can heal a person and at the same time give to him some guidance on how to live their life moving forward.
Yes, of course, yes. And he will really run with those instructions. He really follows it with all his might. Yes, and he will follow those instructions if he doesn't have a problem. A person only develops out of discomfort. Only out of discomfort, when you have no more plans or opportunities, that's when you hit rock bottom. That's when you get off your butt from the couch, you go out, you do something and make things happen. If everything is fine for you, oh, something went wrong, but it's okay, I'm there now. I'll just ask someone for help and everything will be fine again.
So what?
This is complete depravity and self-destruction of that person. Whoever is involved in it and the one who helps him with it, it doesn't work that way. And yes, healing is real. It exists. But you do that in the moment. If you look at this in time, that is strategically, then you'll see that you haven't healed anyone. You've simply either delayed the inevitable by making it worse, or you've moved the problem from one level to another, where it will come back after some time, multiplied, or you've just absorbed it all, and now you'll be the one working while the other person gets to rest. And here the question is whether it was worth it at all. In most cases, it doesn't pay off at all because no one values what you put into yourself. He absorbed it. And for him, it really doesn't exist anymore. Yes, at some levels, we all absolutely eat. Wholesomely, if you're taking a problem from someone through these levels, they won't have it, but you will. Are you ready to be that kind of healer? Or who asked me? Ready?
Not ready.
I'm not ready? No.
There's no amount of money that I would pay with my health. As I understand it, you also don't have much time to waste on such things.
I would find the time. It's not a problem. I'm just doing something else. I see that people who develop themselves, train themselves, they grasp the dual facets of mastery that I show them, what I teach them. And there's nothing left to heal there. They hop, 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 hop. Uh-huh. So here, right here. That's it. What else can I do here to make something happen? Little live ones. And what if I'm like, here you have this sickness. Now I pulled it forward by about 10 years. For the most part, a person just picks their nose for these 10 years and doesn't do anything at all. And then it catches up with him like multiplied by 3 times 4. Well, that is to say this. If a person wants to aim, what can I say? Goals, please. Yes, the practices that I give allow you to do this with ease. Just like that. Aim, see how it all works. Look at what all this will lead to. Look at how the lives of those you aim for will change. What about you, for example, there? Here is a man, wife, yes, husband, wife, child. So, for example, you helped the wife with her health, but then her child fell. Look at how all of this works. Take it upon yourself, carry someone else's karma in yourself, burn it off. And we'll see how interesting it will be for you to deal with all of this later. But yes, it exists, it's real, that's the whole thing. But You can't just snap your fingers and completely dispel it. Someone will still have to pay for it. And mostly the healer pays not with money, but with their consciousness. And a person can slip through as a fool for money.
Philosophers say what? Questions are more important than answers. Do you agree with this?
Yes, I agree with that. Because when you ask a question, you become an active participant. When you get an answer, your activity comes to an end. Can I ask the next question? When I didn't know how the world worked, it motivated me. When I figured out what it all looked like, I looked at it myself. I'm like, oh, damn. My illusions about the fact that now I've clapped 3 times, stomped twice, just tell me, how is this done? They immediately dispersed. Aushan, how many times do I need to repeat the mantra? What, did I teach you anything at all? The same ones come to me. Anton, how many times do I need to repeat the mantra? Oh, God, 100,000 times. Anton, I repeated the mantra 100,000 times. I say, here's the next one. And how much is that? 100,000 times. And then, at some point, a person has an epiphany. Oh, that's not quite how it works. But at least it happened. At least there's this mechanism that you will wake up anyway. But it's not about the number of repetitions. It's about something else.
You need to bring it to life. Yes. With the mantra.
Of course, yes.
And to give.
The transmission of awakenings, when it lives within you, you no longer need to repeat it. It's all on an energy level. Well, it's the same thing. And how many times do you need to start the car? Yeah, you start it once and you're off. In general, that's why I completely agree that as long as you can generate questions, it's much better than just getting answers.
All right, Anton, thank you. Thank you for your answers. Let's wrap up this block. Friends, thank you for your attention. I recommend not to miss the next video. To do this, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. And in the description of the video, you can find links to all of Anton's training.
Do you want to unlock your inner strength and learn to manage energy? The course, Power of Consciousness 1. Practical Energy will provide you with tools to improve health, develop intuition, and gain a deeper understanding of the world. Join and start changing your life right now. Link in the description.